All right, welcome in. Cube Show Podcast, a college football podcast, usually comes to you on Sundays, trying to give you a little extra college football content on Sunday. And as you know, each and every week brought to you by Wickles Pickles, wickedly delicious. Find them in your grocery store. They sponsor the show every week. We got a big show for you today. Excited to welcome in Stanford Steve, big buddy of mine for a long time. Love his thoughts on college football, his access to coaches, where he's been with Gameday, his career at ESPN, a lot of things that we're going to touch on, the future of the college football playoff. We're going to hit all of that. But that's what's been in the news really for the last, 48 hours, because Ross Dellinger, if you don't follow Ross over at Yahoo, you need to. He's been all over this, discussing that we haven't even gotten to a 12-team playoff game yet, haven't even played a game, haven't started a season in which we're going to have a 12-team playoff. And we're already making decisions on a 14-team playoff, essentially, we're going to go to. And I think we talked about on this show a while back that it's going to go there. Just thought we were going to make those decisions a little bit further down the road. Now it appears as though it's already under discussion, and we've got even some of the parameters that are being discussed as to what's going to be put in place for how teams are going to get in and how that's going to be decided. So we start off with the 14-team playoff. An automatic bid's going to go to the SEC and the Big Ten, 3 each. ACC, Big 12, 2 each, 1 for the group of 5. And then obviously you'll have your automatic qualifiers, which could include Notre Dame. It would mean basically that the top 4 seeds would go to conference champions, which means Notre Dame could not be a top 4 seed in that version of the college football playoff. Then we hear from Ross Dellinger yesterday that now it looks like the SEC and the Big Ten want the number 1 and number 2 overall seeds no matter what. Now, I understand the amount of weight that those two conferences carry, the players, the brands, the coaches, the recent success. I get it all. I understand it and I know it. I also know the conflict of interest that most likely comes with a lot of these discussions and a lot of these decisions from Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti as to wanting to try and protect the greater good of the sport or college sports in general. I know for a fact Greg Sankey wants to do that and tries to do that. I've had that conversation with him. And then protecting your entity and doing what's best for your individual entity. And right now, those two entities have the power and the clout to be able to push people around. They have the ability to walk in rooms and begin to throw bows. Just like Ludacris, they have the capabilities to go in and do that. So I don't really blame them. I don't look at it and say it's not something that they should do, but I'm also not going to tell you something that I love. Trying to tell me that 2 teams from 2 different conferences should automatically be the number 1 and number 2 seed, I think is just flat bogus. Now, you could go to recent memory and say, yeah, look at where they've been. Look at what those conferences have done. I understand it. I get it. I played college football in a day of age when most SEC teams couldn't get a sniff on College Game Day. Didn't want to talk about us. And unless they were on your campus, didn't spend too much time talking about the ability for you to maybe win a national championship. Teams had to scratch and claw to even be mentioned to possibly be in one of the 2 games that might be voted upon to be a national champion. So now, fast forward to, you're looking at potentially, no matter what the records are of teams atop those 2 conferences, they're going to be the number 1 and the number 2 seed. And when are those 2 going to begin to fight about who's 1 and who's 2? And how's that going to be determined? I don't even have clarity on how we're going to determine what teams get in outside of these automatic bids. And I asked Pete Thamel on my radio show with McElroy earlier this week, has anybody even begun talking about something else that may come up if this doesn't work out for the next group? Also asked him, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Greg Sankey banging the drum for no automatic qualifiers a couple of years ago? And he confirmed yes, but obviously things are moving fast. And that movement, I think, is where a lot of people maybe have a little bit of pause. You might not. You can tweet in at Cube Show. Let us know what you think of whether this should go there, should not go there. Comment right here on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't. We're gunning for 10,000. We're almost there. Thank you so much. Got about 900 to go. So we're technically not almost there. But do you want this? Do you like this? You know, I don't know if I can get on board with it just from the standpoint of they've been good in recent memory, therefore they should be there. There are people like me that remember different times in college football. And I know it looks like we're going to this big breakaway. I get it. And we had a really interesting conversation with Trent Dilfer, UAB head coach, in studio on Friday, who actually had this to say about how quickly things are going down that path to potentially the Big Ten and the SEC breaking away?
I think what's coming, I'm pretty confident in this, talking to people far more powerful than me, but these are billionaires in the Bay Area, and there's going to be a break off of about 50 to 60 teams, and they're going to be professional football. And then everybody else is going to be what you're saying. Is this, call it G5, call it college football, call it whatever you want. We're going to be competing on hopefully a more level playing field. That's coming way faster than anybody can anticipate. And there's people active, there's venture capitalists right now actively looking to buy college franchises. So the guys are going to thrive over the next, I think it's faster than everybody's saying 2 to 5 years that this thing gets turned upside down. I think it's in the next 18 months that this thing gets completely dumped upside down.
So obviously 18 months, a lot faster than a lot of us really do believe that something like that is or would take place, is going to or would take place. But I think there's a lot of people out there that just remember the different points in time of college football, and whether it was a Southern Miss knocking off Alabama and Auburn in a multiple year span, Southern Miss having a couple of wins against Alabama in certain years, Louisiana Monroe knocking off Alabama, Boise State in the run that they had, TCU a couple of years ago. We've had these teams forever that we can think of and talk about, and teams that maybe should have been in the playoffs, shouldn't have been in the playoff. People down on Cincinnati because they got in and what they did. I thought they did enough that year. Did I think that they were as good as some of the other teams that were in? But no, some of those other teams that were in were just better football teams that year than maybe they will be some other years. We've seen these different times in college football. And even if you're 100% on board with where things are right now, I believe that the biggest problem with that mindset is that we have been in this era of college football for this much time. We haven't even entered year 3 of where we are in right now of college football. And I said this last week with Golick. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to sit back and just say, this is college football, enjoy it for what it is. It feels like we're just going to change forever. I don't know if this thing gets to neutral again. Does it? Who knows? And if it does, when? So to make big decisions like this right now, when we have no idea where things are going, and to think that definitively those decisions should be made based on where we've been for such a small period of time, and when everything was so brand new in that small period of time, I just don't know if I can feel great about it. But we also don't know if this is where it's headed. We don't know for certain if that's where things are going to end up. But it's getting a little bit silly with some of the demands that I feel like not only are being made, but also looks like that are being agreed to. And when I asked Pete Thamel about what else could potentially be discussed, I asked Pete, I said, is there anybody at the lower levels that's even trying to come up with an alternative, that's trying to think of something else? Because back in 2013, when Auburn lost to Florida State in the BCS, I was on radio in Huntsville, Alabama, and I said, this is the end of college football as we know it. Here's the revenue wheel. Let's use round numbers. $1 billion a year. 20% we'll say was going to non-Power 5 teams. The powers that be were looking at that saying, $1 billion is a lot of money. 20%, not a big percentage, but 20% of $1 billion is a lot of money. Why are those guys getting that? They have no determination on who wins our national championship. They have very little determination on how many eyeballs actually watch our sport when you look at it collectively. So they started to squeeze it, and they're going to keep squeezing it. And you're going to see less group of 5 teams get paycheck games that they have to have. It makes their budget every year. I can remember talking to coaches at Georgia State when they were first coming into FBS, and they went and played Alabama, and they got drummed. And he said, but you know what? They put lights on our practice field. I've talked to other coaches about how they built an indoor with money that they got. When Terry Bowden was at Akron, I can remember vividly talking to him about how he scheduled teams and why. He said, we play 2 non-conference games to get the paycheck because we absolutely have to have that to meet our athletic department's budget. Department, not football. Department have to meet that budget. The other one was one we thought we could win, so that would potentially help us be able to go be bowl eligible. Those are going away. These teams continue to expand the number of teams in their conferences. What has the most value? Conference games. Now, the SEC is going to want more money annually from the TV partners to be able to add that extra game. I don't blame them for doing that. And that's when it's going to be added, is when that money is appropriated. But when you have those teams and you have that amount of money on the line, you're going to play each other. It's going to be better ratings. It's going to bring more eyeballs. It's going to be more dynamic football, and other teams are going to get left out. They're going to continue to squeeze it. How long are they going to hold on to that? How long are they going to sit there and scratch and claw and hang on by a thread to whatever little amount of money it is, big picture, but to them it's a big amount of money because it would make their budget. And we mentioned this with Steve a little bit about the FCS in the spring, and I caught hell for saying that I thought they should stay. But I spoke to administrators that said our attendance would go up, and we think the people who are having to choose between going to Auburn games, Alabama games, now might come to UAB games, or now might go to Stanford games, or Alabama A&M, or Alabama State games, whatever that is. And I know UAB is not FCS, but I'm using it as an example of people who have those options. If I was the American or Conference USA, I'd play all my games during the week. Conference USA was brilliant doing what they did during the middle of the week last year. My point in all this is who is in power and who is a forward enough thinker that has the wherewithal to say, this is going to continue to get squeezed and we're going to be left out. What do we have planned next? Maybe that's where private equity does come in and say, we'll build you a playoff. This is where we want our games played. We think we can sell this. We think we can get a TV deal here. And we're going to roll forward with it. Maybe still go get a pay game or two every year if you can. But if not, you actually have a way to go play for a national championship. And I think it would be pretty good football. There's a lot of this that's scary where we're headed. A lot of you love it. McElroy on my show every morning, he loves it. He wants AFC, NFC, Big Ten, SEC, go at it, boom, Super Bowl. That's what he wants. I personally have a little bit of a different feel for the rest of college football. Now we're talking about Army and Navy potentially being intruded upon because the playoffs are going to move things up, moving up bowl games, maybe having other games against Army, Navy. Folks, Army, Navy is an American institution. No one should mess with that. There is no way on God's green earth that anyone should try to put another college football game of similar magnitude and stature up against Army, Navy. Don't do that shit. But these are some of the traditions that are being yanked away. This is some of the history and some of what we all fell in love with college football for that is leaving. What's it going to do? I don't know. I know it's more popular than it's ever been because we talk about it year round. You can hate the portal, but it offers us different viewpoints to discuss every day. You can hate where college football playoffs going, but it's given us all these different ways to talk about it every day. College football has stumbled upon the NFL's calendar model of being in the media and being on the front of our minds. Now, some of that's going to go away. Some of that might stay, but the reality is we're having more discussion about college football than we've ever had before. And that's great for viewership. That's great for discussion. But is the quality of the football going to be the same? I don't know. Did people care less about it this year based on ratings and attendance? No, they didn't. So I don't know exactly what the health's going to look like because I don't even know where the sport's going. I know I love it and I know I want what's best for it. And that's at every level. If it's the MAC, if it's the Sun Belt, listen, I came up doing Sun Belt games in TV. So I have an appreciation and affinity for where certain things are, and I just don't want them kicked to the curb. And the way that some of this is being handled by demands and wants and desires is essentially curb stomping some of these lower level conferences. And I don't love that. I'm just being honest. I don't love it. Two other things I want to hit quickly. I had a chance to go watch some film. You'll hear me reference this with Stanford Steve when he joins us. Nick Scorton, 6'4", 280. Bryan, Texas, 19 years old, edge defender from Purdue. I like this kid a lot. He's going to Texas A&M. I think Elko got a good one. Not super twitchy, but he's physical. He's heavy-handed. He's got a nasty bull rush. He's got a good little inside move. He gets stuck on blocks a little bit at times in pass rush situations. Now, Purdue moved him a lot. They slanted him some. They ran some stunts where he came all the way back down inside. He plays the run fairly well. He's not afraid to do it, but they actually dropped him in coverage a little bit, and he actually operated well in space. I do think sometimes he overcommits, whether that's on a slant or whether he has contained, and he gets a little bit out of position. But if you're just talking physically being able to hold up and being a good player in the Southeastern Conference, I think Texas A&M is getting one here. This is an edge defender that an Elko scheme can be a multiple player, can do different things at the line of scrimmage. He's going to rush the passer. He can play the run. If you need him to drop, he can. And I think he's physical enough to obviously be able to manage what's going to be asked of him to do in the Southeastern Conference week in and week out. So the Aggies get a good one here with Nick Scroden from Purdue. The other thing I want to talk about, and Steve and I are going to hit this just a little bit, is Harold Perkins and this situation happening with him at LSU. First, what is your situation with your jeans? Blue Delta jeans is where you need to go. BlueDeltaJeans.com, the most comfortable denim you'll ever wear. Stretchy, breathable. You can dress them up, dress them down. They are incredible. I have them. It's all I wear now. I don't want to wear my old jeans. Custom fit for you, for your body. And you can do that digitally now as well. Gift certificates, gift cards also available. Go to BlueDeltaJeans.com. All right, Harold Perkins. A lot of people were freaking out because Brian Kelly, in a recent interview, said he's going to be off the ball. He's going back to linebacker. Now, he's talking about playing at will. And I think everybody's hearing inside linebackers thinking he's going to play Mike. But still, if he's a will linebacker, he can be versatile and be asked to do a lot of different things. Now, here's what people are forgetting in this. They feel like they're taking their best attacking player or attack weapon or just weapon at the line of scrimmage, and they're getting him out of those situations. Why that is not happening is because Blake Baker is now your defensive coordinator. So even if he's off the ball linebacker on every snap next year, you know what he's probably going to do 30% of the time? Pressure. Because Blake Baker's going to bring it. And he's going to attack, and he's going to have guys lined up in different places, and he's going to blitz the A gap and the B gap. He's going to line up off edge. He's going to bring pressure there. And you can also use him in different down and distances and different personnel packages in different ways. So if it's 3rd and 22, I don't think he's going to be lined up over the slot receiver as a nickel. You're going to have him off edge being able to rush the passer. So I have confidence in Brian Kelly. I have confidence in Blake Baker. I know a lot of people heard this and said, oh, no, our playmaker's not going to be there able to make plays at the line of scrimmage anymore. Don't fall for that. Don't buy that. I just don't think that's real. The other part of this is this. You guys have heard me before. College football, we don't like to meet in the middle. We want Burger King, our way or the highway. And you don't always have it your way. And that goes for players. Harold Perkins is a unique talent, super talented. I thought he was the best defensive player in college football coming back last year. Didn't necessarily live up to that. Some not his fault. A lot maybe not his fault. But if you want to play at the line of scrimmage and you want to live there, you got to play the run. There are going to be things that are asked of you that you're not always going to like to do. You might have to take on a double team. You might have to keep contained. You might have to drop in the flat as a hook defender. Some of those things happen every now and then. You want to play off the ball? You better know formations. You better know personnel groupings. You better know how to shift when motions come and when formations trade, because if you don't, you're going to be out of position and you're going to cost your team yards. So some of that meeting in the middle is going to have to take place from Harold Perkins. And if it does, with this new scheme and system, I think he can be someone who continues to wreck games, even on a more regular basis this season than what he did last. So a little bit of what's happening around the SEC, a little bit of what's happening around college football. Enjoy Stanford Steve, one of my good friends, one of the guys I look up to in this business, to be honest with you. And I think you're going to enjoy this interview. All right, the legend, Stanford Steve. Let's rewind a little bit quickly. I think I've heard this story before. I don't think a lot of people know the actual Stanford Steve story. Like, how far back does it go? I think a lot of people just believe that that's what Van Pelt calls you, and it was kind of just for fun and games. But where did this originate? How did this start?
Oh, man, bringing me back in the memory tunnel, Cole. Well, I graduated from Stanford. Yes, I do have the diploma. And tried the old internet startup, and that didn't go well. Was out of a job very, very quickly. And I had to come back home to Connecticut. I wasn't one of those guys that was going to say, hey, I got rent next month. I mean, living in the Bay Area, there was no jokes. Rent was serious. So literally took a job doing local high school games, and got an in with a guy that used to work there, Bob Sagendorf. I still thank him every day to this day. Did local games with him. He had previous experience producing NBA games for ESPN Radio. And I got it in the door. 2004, I actually just hit my 20-year mark. February 2004, I started as an entry-level PA in ESPN Radio, cutting highlights, working midnights, overnight shift, getting stuff ready for Mike and Mike. And slowly but surely moved my way up. Got the Gameday producer gig in 2007 for radio. and was able to travel with TV and everybody. And Russillo was my host. We had Trevor Maddich, Tom McShay. One of the best times of my life. Really got to get back out and feel the vibe of college football. And with that, Ryan's show started with Scott. And I would go in on Mondays after the game day meeting, and they would be prepping for their Monday through Friday show. And Scott and I just struck a conversation and a relationship. I think you and Greg do this on your radio show. We pride ourselves as game watchers.
Yeah.
We're not there to get in the mix with, something to try and get clicks or anything. Like we pride ourselves on knowing players, knowing games, coaches, and being familiar with it and just watching. And Scott from there just started calling me Stanford Steve. Him and Ryan, that was me. With Coward, I was Steve in the hallway previously because I literally was just yelling at Coward before he would run in the hallway for segments. And he finally had me on a couple times. But yeah, Scott and Ryan brought me in, ended up getting on their show as an AP, and then produced it for 1 year. And then Scott made the decision they made the decision to give Scott his own sports center. And he said, "You're coming with me." I'm like, "Whoa, hold on." I'm like, "I've never done TV before. I don't know how to edit. I don't know." He's like, "Don't worry about it. We're going to do it. We're going to do bad beats, the whole thing." I'm like, "What?" So it was looking back, like it seemed a lot faster that things were happening,
yeah.
but there were some time in there that, when I went down to Auburn for the first time, when I went to Alabama for the first time, being at Johnny Manziel's game against Bama, the return in College Station, one of the hottest weekends I've ever, feeling that A&M heat in, I believe that was like second week of September. Like it was early.
It was early. Man. Yeah, it was early.
I just remember being on the sideline and seeing guys go down, like oxygen, like that was a real deal. But yeah, it was, God, so it's been over 20 years at ESPN this past month, and then probably a good 15 with Scott. And again, I say it every time somebody asks me, I owe him everything. He's given me every opportunity, and we've carved out something that's been as fun as can be in the last 12 months, or not even 12, the last 8 months since starting Game Day and doing that gig has been the most fun I've ever had in my life, I think.
Yeah.
But just being around with the people and the experiences that I've been able to have and the places and games I've been able to go to I'm truly thankful.
All right. I got so many follow-ups to that one. First off, it's cool because we always have, I think I have like 10 of them, that person that kind of got us in the door, that believed in us. At ESPN, mine was Ackles. And it's a long story I've told before about he thought I was going to get a studio gig. I ended up not getting it after auditioning. And he's like, "Hold on, I'll find you some games." Like he just believed in me. Yeah. And found me some games. I did a random assortment of games with Mike Cousins and Kevin Weidel, who's now a scout for the Ravens.
Love Kevin. Love Mike.
Oh yeah, they're both incredible. It was such a fun year because we called it the No Ego Crew. Like all we all wanted to do was just be better.
Yep.
And obviously Weidel just grinded on the tape. We're texting all hours of the night.
Yeah.
And I think we did Shea. We were supposed to do Shea Patterson's opening game his senior year. We had Calvary Baptist. Well, he went down to IMG literally like 2 weeks before the season started. And we had the kid that went to LSU that played like 11 years of college football, bounced around all the other places, quarterback, receiver guy. We did like some Mountain West. First time I've been to Logan, Utah, which was incredible. It was an awesome year. So we all had that guy. And then now I'm thinking about some of these, like we see these old Alabama coaching staff pictures with like Lane and all these other guys. Kirby's on there. So you walking around the halls at ESPN, can we basically have had that with like that Cowherd time? Was like Gifford in there with Cowherd and you're walking around, Mike and Mike, like how many high profile ESPNers were grabbing coffee and like pushing buttons for people in that?
You brought Gifford's name up, Amanda Gifford, who's at the top of the top now. I actually started probably a couple weeks or maybe a couple months before her, and she never had to do the tape room stuff. She got right in the show, and she knew what she had a plan. And, it's funny. It always comes back to this.
That is the exact opposite of you and I. It's just like, we'll figure this shit out somehow, some way.
Anytime I talk to kids that are trying to, in college now especially, or even in high school, you got to have a plan. You're going to hear, as a player especially, you think you can play football forever. And then people are going to tell you, hey, you got to have something. Football, you're not going to be able to play it forever. You're not Tom Brady. There's only one Tom Brady. And you're like, yeah. And I could go back. I remember it, college and these alumni functions. Hey, you want to go? And certain guys would go. And I'd be like, they don't want to talk to me. I'm a second string tight end. Like there's nothing. And it's right there. Like you have to get out of your comfort level. And I wasn't ready to do that. I was, I guess you could say arrogant. And I didn't think I needed to. And it was a big kick in the face, man. Like being out of college, watching my guys that redshirted, still playing, and I'm at home in Connecticut, staying up and watching the games and having nothing.
All right,
nothing
tell me
do.
this one. This will bring back probably some bad memories because this one for me. Where did you watch the draft that you could have been drafted in? Because that was like the ultimate kick in the junk for me. Like I actually, even though I knew it wasn't going to happen, you have this thing in the back of your mind, like, all right, I did like 38 reps at 225. Like I ran pretty well at my pro day. Like I have played some ball. Like everybody needs a center. Like there's something in the back of your mind that's like, it could still happen, but it's not. So, I mean, just sitting there watching it, like trying to fight back the tear of holy hell, I'm going to have to like do something real now. Like
I was actually still with my buddies at Stanford, and two guys got drafted. One guy signed as a free agent, and I had basically tore up my elbow, and then I wasn't ready. Like I couldn't even do our pro day. So like I was already in the mindset of trying to get rid of all that weight that we had to put on to play.
Oh, really? And I went the exact opposite.
Yeah. I did that for a couple weeks. And then once, again, getting out of college and finding the closest happy hour was more of a priority than getting to the gym and having to pay money for a membership because you didn't have that access anymore. But yeah, I remember going and watching with my buddies. I couldn't be more happier, but knowing it's actually the Tom Brady draft, and my old roommate Todd Husek, who was our quarterback,
a year before my draft,
was the quarterback that was drafted after Tom Brady. So he's the one that was the last one after. But yeah, that is because your freshman year, you're like, hey man, because you always think your guys are going to go higher, and they're it's their first time. Being around agents and talking to teams. So like, they're getting every best thing said about them when they're having these conversations. So, we had a defensive end that had to go, Kylie Wong went in the third round. I thought he was a first rounder. Yeah. Ended up playing about 10 years and taught me so much. And then you see it like, wow, he's a third rounder. I'm like, whoa, this is
a little bit of a wake-up call.
There's a lot more guys out there. And, you think guys from, your old recruiting. I was in the Tim Couch and Ron Dane high school recruiting class, and you go back and you look at the names there, and it just starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And by the end, you're not even close to where those guys went during their 4 years of college. So it was a lot. And like I said, I keep going back to it, but you gotta have a plan. And like, even if you don't play sports, like get experience. You've been in that room a million times. I've been it. Hey, what have you done? That's the first question, right? And then like I'm looking around like, oh well, I got a ride here, so I'm hoping I can make.
I worked at Foot Action in high school. Does that count? I was working when the Concords came out and sold those. Is that good?
Now that you got a camera, on your phone, get on camera experience. Like just have something that you can give the person when they ask, because that's the number one question. And a lot of it is who no doubt. We've been fortunate, both of us, with that aspect of it. But there's a relationship and something built before then. But it's got to start with you and having a plan and experience, because that's the way, I don't want to say cut corners, but that's the way you could skip a level, where you could take another step. And
it's kind of cool that you went down this path, though, because when I asked you to come on, I had some of these visions of like what Richard Dice did when he first started his podcast. And I used to love listening to him. He would always ask everybody like, okay, now give me your process. And I loved hearing about how different people prepare for games, because mine is so discombobulated, especially now. And you know this because you have multiple kids. I'm sure you're like me. Like we used to just grind on tape forever. And then one kid, all right, a little bit less tape, two kids. All right, I'm not getting what I want to in. Three kids, like if I can get in a series of an offense, like I'll sit there and like bam, 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 get a couple guys in. And I was like, it'd be cool to talk to Steve about like that portion of this. So I'm kind of glad, even though that wasn't the ultimate intention that we went there. I'm gonna man, the draft stuff. Cause like we had Takeo and like he goes 10 and you're just like, shit. And then like Victor Riley, who was butting heads with our offensive line coach every day.
Yeah.
And you knew that he tried to ruin him in the draft, still goes like 28. And was like off the team, on the team, in the lineup, out of the lineup, like the most talented 340-pounder you'll ever meet in your life. And then we got a dude like Fred Beasley, who's like a Greek god, but there's no real home from him in that NFL, who falls. It's like, I think he went like 5th or 6th. And you're just like, wait a minute. This dude's power cleaning like 380. Like there's no way he can run the ball. And so I'm going to throw one at you to go back to that era and see if this just sort of, if this hits with you. The guys who are about to come out.
Yeah.
Lincoln Navigator. What does that do for you?
Oh, man. That was the car you wanted.
We had so many guys that weren't going to get drafted.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like they're done. And then they come back to campus and then they're Gator. And you're like, hold on a second, man. Like, I mean, I know you got the agent and all, but it's,
yeah.
That was like a $60,000 car in 98, 99.
You're
like, whoa.
Cool. Like, I had to connect actually with that. I had a buddy, Byron Glaspie, who was from Detroit, had connections to the dealership. Like on my way home, I was gonna stop in Detroit, get a Navigator, and drive it home. then like thinking I was gonna get like half off, right? And then I think I could do like $250 a month. And then we started doing. They're like, oh, we gotta have the conversation for the math. I'm like, what math? I'm like, I'm going to have some money and I'm going to give it to you. And it's going to be a little car payment. They're like, no, man, it's going to be a lot more than that. And you start a $600 car payment in whatever, 2000. Yeah. I was like, man, I don't have $600 for rent. So that grand master plan of having a Navigator the year after college was
these dudes, they rolled up and I was like, man, hadn't been drafted yet. Might go late. That's dicey. That's dicey.
Oh, wow.
Man, God, that brings back some memories. So many
Expedition,
guys
too.
Expedition was big.
I remember doing a spring break. We went to Lake Havasu, and we stopped at Tucson to grab some people, and every Arizona basketball player had an Expedition. I'm like, wow, they had just come off the national championship. I'm like, I guess you got to win a national championship to get an Expedition. We're not in that class.
Not there yet.
Let's tone it down, boys.
Trying to get there. That was 97. The national title team?
They won it in 97. So, yeah, we went there in 98, 99. Bibby was still there. Jason Terry, all those guys.
Saw them beat God right down the road.
Oh, yeah, Birmingham.
Yep. They were able to knock off God, which not a lot of people can say that they beat God. But, they beat Providence and God. I believe that was Billy Donovan. Saw them at the BJCC. Yeah. And that was Roy Williams in Kansas. They went out early. That's how I got tickets to that game because after Kansas lost, nobody the place was empty. Kind of like Kentucky.
Arizona beat 4 1 seeds on the way to the title.
Yep, it was pretty close. Some good teams there too.
Saw God play in high school. So I saw God before you did, maybe.
Wow. I mean, not many people get to see a young God play. But there you go. All right. So let's move on to kind of where we are in college football now. Before we do that, you mentioned Game Day.
Yeah.
You had a chance to do Game Day on radio, which I always loved that show, and it was it was so entertaining, like being there. But being on Game Day, the TV show this year, how did that at all change your opinion just on your 1,000-foot view of college football? Like all of it. Like what changed the most for you about either your approach, your view, the angles, how you watch it, what you see, what you believe? Like what changed after being a part of Game Day this year?
Well, it hit me. I'll tell you, Cole, before I went on the air the first week in Charlotte, and, I've been a nighttime guy with Scott. We've been doing midnight sports centers forever, and I'm a night owl. I'm not an early sleeper at all. I'm not an early riser at all, and I was really worried about that. Like I had 3 alarms set because Desmond and I got to go over and do a hit with Sports Center, the 7 a.m. Eastern Sports Center. So I'm up, we're in Charlotte, and I wake up and I could already hear the music pumping. The DJ's got it going. We're in that little park. And everybody, talks about neutral sites not being the same as on campus. I'm like, wait, hold on a minute. And I look right out my window and it's packed. The sun's not even up yet. It's about 5:45. And I'm like, you got to get yourself ready to go. Like you like these whatever. I was in bed at 8:00 the night before. just because I was so exhausted from the week of doing nights. So like I had made myself that way to be able to get up and not have, but like I literally like I think I did like a push up and sit up circuit before I got in the shower. Like you got to like you know how it is like to get something going.
Yes.
You can't just walk over there, have a coffee, and you're gonna go on the air. Like it was so I'm literally banging out some push ups. I walk over like I literally a walk there, grab a coffee. I'm like I don't even want this. Like the music and the vibe and like South Carolina colors, Carolina, North Carolina, like it was cool. And like, all right, I'm ready to go now. Like in the energy that just goes from 0 to 100 because, you know, we're in the office of the minor league baseball stadium right there. And then you walk out the door and it hits you. And it's, you know, the music again, that's what hit me right away. Like you got to be ready to go to bring this right now because all these people are watching, let alone who's out on TV watching.
Yep.
So it was that just how big it is. And, you know, I did a thing where I wanted to wear lesser, or I should say non-Power 5 teams on the show. And I did that. And like right away, I think I wore UTSA the first week and seeing those people during the show just like light up like, holy cow, like UTSA is on game day today. And it was just to be able to see how big and how fast it was. I said, you know, I was glad I had the mindset, knowing a little bit, like you said, from my radio days and like going over and always making sure you could watch some of the TV game day to feel the energy, man, because it's real. I've said forever. I think we've talked about it also. Like it, you know, in these days when we move past work, and if we're fortunate enough, I would love to be near or on a college campus because there is nothing that exudes the energy of life than a college campus. There's nothing like a college campus and what that brings as far as atmosphere, a way of life, and the going on about, you know, whether it's restaurants and bars and get-togethers and stuff like that. So that was, you know, and then the next week to be able to go to Tuscaloosa, you know, for the first time on TV, you just get to see it. And, you know, you had Texas and Bama, nothing was bigger. That game carried so much length into the season, knowing what we got out of that game and those two roads that those two teams took. So just the enormousness of it, really, you knew it because we've been fans. I mean, we woke up, you know, be the first ones at pregame meal out west before our games to get a little bit of game day, see if we were going to get mentioned on the show. But to feel it and see it and get that interaction with people was as fast as a thing as I've ever felt.
It's so cool. I want to go back to kind of something that you were talking about there with the alarm clock. Like there's nothing that I think stays with a former college football player for the rest of their lives more than that inherent fear of missing that wake-up call, whether it's 2-a-days, which you and I actually had, you know, winter workouts, whatever you call those, fourth quarter program, whatever. If you did have morning lifts in the summer, whatever that was, the fear of what could happen, the repercussions of being late for one of those, it sticks with you forever. Mm-hmm. And that's, you get the multiple alarms, and it's just, you know, that's why I still today doing a 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. radio show, I still, you know, whether it's 10 till, 15 till, quarter till, you know, hour before, like I'm always waking up, looking at the clock. That fear never leaves you of missing that alarm clock.
No. And even worse on top of that, I still have nightmares about forgetting to study for an exam. That's the one that gets me cold sweat right out of bed. Like, oh my God, you got an exam. Oh my God, I forgot to study for it. Like that, along with the alarm clock and that thing. Yep. That did happen a couple times in college. So
kids, there's the difference between Auburn and Stanford right there, is I don't know that feeling. If I forgot to study for an exam, then I just forgot to study for an exam, and we went in and we filled out our multiple choice and we tried to make the best of it. So, all right. You know, you and I play in a different era of college football. Where we're headed, I don't think any of us know. It's pretty cool. We had Trent Dilfer in studio today. McElroy and I did. And he said, I know everybody thinks this thing is heading down a track fast. He goes, I think it's happening a lot faster than people think. He said, I actually think that we get to this big divide, this big split in the next 18 months, Steve, is what he said. Based on some of the people that I've talked to, he went into the whole, you know, I've spoken to people in private equity. They're asking me, how much would you pay for Georgia? How much does LSU cost? And that's a whole different conversation, but just where are you generally in where big college football is headed? Because I think if I asked you college football,
Yeah,
we could probably go 3 or 4 different directions.
exactly.
But where are you on where it appears as though big college football is headed?
I've been thinking about it, and I've tried to stay out of the conversation about the people that have been behind the super conference idea and how small that felt to me, where it was basically 4 entities, playing for that ultimate, big college football prize. And I'm starting to think that way because, you know, it's college football is its own animal in college sports, and then you had the committee with Hancock in charge of it, and they sort of seemed like they had a plan and there was a place to go for answers, and there was a place that gave the answers of this is what it's going to be. And now that he's gone, I feel like it's everybody just trying to throw their resume in and tell you how big they are. And I get it. It's a giant pot at the end of the rainbow, right? Like everybody wants to go get a piece of that. And what are you going to do? You're going to puff your chest out and show how great you are to be in the conversation to get some of that gold at the end of the pot. So how many entities are end up going to be going to get that money? That's what scares me, because everybody said, there's people that said it's going to be 2 super conferences, with the Big Ten and the SEC. And now you see this 14-team idea and the guarantees to those 2 entities. So are those 2 getting together and saying, this is what we're going to do, and everybody else has to fall behind because they don't have the cash wherewithal or the name bravado that those 2 have? It sort of feels like that. And I don't like it. Because of never being a part of that as a player, especially always knowing you had to do things to get there. You had to earn it, and now it feels like it's not going to be that way. And just one quick one is I've been to a Pac-12 title game, multiple. I've been to multiple Big Ten title games. I've been to a Big 12 title game. And this past year was my first SEC title game. And I'll just tell you, there's nothing that I felt even in the 5 tiers closest to what the SEC title game was for me this year. And had a chance to talk to Greg Sankey. I said, hey, this year, this is my first time. He's like, get out of here. And we're sitting in the end zone. Bands are playing. Special teams are out there. Teams are coming out. Crowds are starting to fill in. And I'm like, just one question. With ESPN getting this next year, are we changing the time? And he looked at me. And he looked around. He's like, why would we change it? Look at this. And I'm like, you're right. That's why you're the most powerful man in the sport. And I just was able to take it all in, was blown away by it. It truly, I said it was Texas Bama on steroids, because Texas Bama is great because it's legit 50-50. So no matter what happens on a play, it's going to be loud as hell. And with the SEC in the dome, it's in knowing what was at stake in that game, it's in a level. And you've been to a million of them. But to think that's going to be gone or not mean anything, that's weird, because I had come from we don't need conference championships to seeing that, and I'm like, whoa, this is its own deal. It's a mini college Super Bowl. Knowing what you have.
It's amazing when you were saying that. What I was immediately thinking was, and now it looks like we don't even need this anymore.
I know that,
which is crazy to think about, because I played in 2 of them. Always felt like just bigger than you could ever imagine. We played Peyton in Tennessee one year. We played
that's right,
Tyrannosaurus Rex in Florida the other year. And I mean, it was just like, it just felt massive. And I mean, I played in the Iron Bowl in Legion Field, Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa, Iron Bowl at Auburn. I played at the Swamp in Death Valley. It just, that thing was different. Like I played in Knoxville the year after they won a national title. I tell people all the time, it's the loudest environment in sports I've ever been in. It was freaking incredible. I turned to the guy next to me, it's Ben Leard, my quarterback. And I was like, man, that's loud. And he's just like looking. And I yelled at the top of my lungs. I said, man, that's loud. And he just kept looking like he couldn't hear me. You couldn't hear yourself think. And so It's to think about, we might not need that anymore, or that's just not necessary and it goes away. And if you're going to add more teams, you have more games. So from that standpoint, it almost makes sense for it to go away. But like you're saying, that environment to maybe be gone. The automatic stuff, man, is where I kind of want to get your thoughts on, because I have a feeling that we'll be in the same place here. But
Yeah.
at any point in time ever, to guarantee spots in is one thing. To guarantee a 1 and 2 seed, when there are other teams out there that absolutely would have an opportunity to prove that they should be ranked ahead of those teams or then seeded ahead of those teams, it just feels crazy that could actually take place.
Yeah, especially with the conference championship game idea, because what if you have an upset in that game? You know, like you think about your biggest favorites we've had in these SEC title games. If the other team won it, what was it? Gary Pinkel or Spurrier played Cam Newton in that team.
Oh no, the Cam team played South Carolina. Spurrier in South Carolina.
Spurrier,
yeah,
like
Lattimore and those guys.
Yeah, like if that, if something happened to Cam and South Carolina wins that game, they're the automatic. Like that's so. And now you don't have divisions, so I don't know how you calculate these things. And the other thing, I get it. The Big Ten is as hot as it's ever been, thanks to Michigan and what they did, and the teams that they beat. But if you look real close to the Final Four of the past year, all those teams are in the same conference this year. Or I should say, it's two conferences represented, and I think it's a lot of pressure. We know what the pressure that Ohio State's on. Michigan, I don't see how they relive the season they just had. And now you're asking SC without the number one pick coming in, UCLA without the coach that they had to get back to relevance, an Oregon team that seems like they are trending in the right way, and a Washington team that feels like it got dismantled after playing a national championship. Like that's going to be guaranteed a spot. I'm not comfortable with that. And I didn't gotten to the other conferences who are already, seems like, pegged down a tier because they haven't been able to sustain what the SEC has. So it just feels really, really messy, man. And I was pumped. Scott and I did a segment when the 12 were announced with the AQ qualifier, but it was going to be different. And then we tried doing a visual, but you can't because those teams are all in a different conference this year. And now because
we can line up Texas and say, oh, they'd have been a 2 seed, but all right, we don't know what they would have looked like. No. And then if Texas had the same kind of year in the SEC, where's Georgia, Alabama? We don't, or Ole Miss. You can't do that.
Couldn't do it.
You're right. You can't put them in there, because when Ross put his article out yesterday about now looking like SEC and Big Ten, we're going to have 1 and 2 guaranteed, the seeds. He had the 14-team playoff line. I was like, yeah, but no.
Yeah,
it's not.
Exactly.
It's not it.
Totally with you.
You can't do that. So I asked Thamel the other day when he was on the show, and he's kind of taking us through this in the mindset. I said, have you heard anything about anyone else at a lower level talking about what's next or an alternative? Or because let's be real, Steve, if we keep going down this path, they're going to have to find something. And is that where maybe private equity finally steps in? Who is even the leader? You talked about Sankey before, and it looks like Tony Petitti, by the way, is just flying past the previous Big Ten leadership and how he's handling things. I think Yormark's even doing a great job with the Big 12. Yep. I love putting your sports in different places and being creative and trying to build recognition and new eyeballs. I mean, that's something that could carry on for 50 years and be great. Who is that leadership at that next level that could even say, this is what we have to do? We can't keep holding on to that, that teat any longer for that small chunk.
Yeah.
Because what we've seen is whatever that percentage of the pie was, shrinking. They're going to cut it off at some point. It's like people told me I was crazy when I did FCS football in the spring. I'm like, they should lead this year. And all the FCS fans told me that I was an idiot and I was dumb and I was stupid. But I actually talked to ADs and I actually talked to people in those departments and coaches, and they knew immediately their attendance goes up 20, 30%, which is the revenue that you need to survive.
Yep.
And immediately you get a much better television deal in the spring than you do in the fall. So all of a sudden your revenue works and you can make that be sustainable. So there are other parts that might not work, but I don't know what that next thing is. And I feel like somebody's got to be working on that, because you're going to get stuck and you're not going to have anything.
Yeah. the problem is when you start talking private equity, like that's a foreign language that I don't have the closest thing to knowing how to speak or talk.
No, I'm with you.
And that's where it starts getting scary to me. I'm not saying that it's not doable. I'm not saying it wouldn't be great. But it goes back to, it just feels like there's that ultimate gold pile at the end. And people now, it feels like people have different ways of going about to get it, if that makes sense. You know, like you have your big name teams that want a cheat step ahead. You want the little people maybe changing things to make sure they're included, to possibly hope one time they're in there. So it's to me, it's super confusing, and it's something I haven't stepped into, let alone try to deep dive. So it's I haven't invested a lot of time in the possibility of that.
All right, so I want to go. Let's talk some actual football.
Yeah.
All that stuff's cool and it's great and it's whatever. You and I both big fans of Chip Kelly and how he operates, how he manipulates, how he creates. It's almost mind bending to watch. I mean, you and I trade clips all the time. Like, do you see this? Like, how the hell are they reading this guy? Like, it's incredible. Now with what he's going to have at his disposal, like, can anybody beat Ohio State this year? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they could be beaten. I think it's going to be a process. I will say it's a pretty crazy dynamic because when I think about him, and I think about him going to work for Ryan Day, and everybody knows the past that they have had, and Ryan Day played for him. And then you think of the O-line coach who coached for Chip, and then he previously was with Ryan Day at, I think it's BC. When I'm a new coordinator coming in, I'm thinking, okay, I got to learn my personnel. But he really doesn't have to, because Ryan and the O-line coach already know these guys. So there's already been a meeting. Hey, let's just take imaginary numbers. Hey, 77, don't get on him. He's not going to respond to loud criticism. 52, he's going to be more of a film guy. 53 is your most agile O-lineman. You know, like, so much of his work is going to be done for him that I think that's going to help translate. And I always say, I don't think there's a coach in America that could compensate for average to below average O-line play than Chip Kelly. I really don't. The way you talk about, I mean, the things he does, the formations he builds, the personnel he uses, the eye candy he uses, I think is next level. And to see, I mean, he had a couple guys on the 22 O-line drafted or free agency. They played this year in the NFL, but like, he hasn't had any world beaters. I don't think he has any world beaters at Ohio State. But when you go back to Oregon, he had some guys, on the O-line, but where did he make his money? It was getting the ball in space and creating space with those just getting the best game changers there were. And that's the thing that he has at Ohio State also. So when it comes into it, I think it's a scary thing. Now, is it going to be work? Obviously, yes. I think it's a constant thing. I almost start to think, Cole, I haven't checked out everybody's schedule, and I know we have some big out-of-conference games early on, but, like, to me, watching NFL, the first month is the preseason. Like, you don't know. I don't think the coaches know what they have because they can't get game reps during practice. And I almost think with college now, like, we have another transfer window that's going to open here, and I think it's going to double or triple the amount of action we saw from last year's deadline at this time. So you get those guys, you get them for a camp. Now they got to earn their stripes in camp. How are they going to be able to do that? I don't think they're going to get a fair assessment. So how do you do that? You treat your out of conference against your, non-Power 5 games as an audition. And so I think these teams are going in with a mindset like, this is what we are, but these are the other parts that we can add to make this car really, really good. And we got a couple weeks to use that. So I that's one thing I'm going to be looking for early on. And that's the problem is you start the season, you dive into these teams, and then, you go watch some other teams, but you never go back and watch a team, what they were
Yeah.
say, looking on the middle of October to what they were in September. Like, that's the time I don't have. But I feel like the coaches do have the plan, and that's the thing I don't think they get credit for is the ideas in the dominoes, trying to predict what dominoes are going to fall and what options you have off of those. That's something why you have these monster staffs to try and formulate plans when stuff does go wrong. So, but going back to Ohio State, I think they're pretty well set off. The expectation isn't higher, I don't think, around any program. And now when you look at what your arch rival has done, I think the everything's a little bit hotter.
Yeah.
But I think those guys are accustomed to it.
You brought up something really interesting, Steve, and I wonder, let's take those first 3-4 games of the season, even if it's not, a directional school or an FCS school. I wonder how much more open coaches are going to be to say, no, just let the kid, just go out there and let him rip some. Put it in the air. Let's throw it up. Let's not just go ground and pound. Let our defense win.
Yeah.
If defenses are not a little bit more aggressive, say, no, pressure the kid. Or
Mm-hmm.
no, put the freshman corner in and play man. It doesn't matter because now it's not lose one game. We're probably out of this thing.
Correct.
At least, there was 2 or 3 teams that probably didn't think that way. Michigan, Bama, whoever else, Georgia. But now maybe some of these teams go into it. No. Let's go figure out who we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if we drop the game, we drop the game. But if we win, 9 of the next 10, we're still probably in. We're good. I wonder if we're going to see different styles of coaching early, as opposed to maybe not even just the amount of guys they play, but coaching a lot more freely in the first month of the season, because you do have a little bit more leeway to still potentially be in the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's all about the mindset. Because like you said, you're going to still have those lower tier group of 5 that are playing this as their Super Bowl when they go visit the big boys. And they're going to be looking at the total opposite way. Like, hey, we got to get some guys time. Maybe you're trying to keep guys happy. That's locker room stuff that I try not to get involved with, but I just think about. I think the different mindsets of where teams are and the different approaches, that's what makes college football great. The approach at every school is different from the one you're playing. And that's what's cool. And I'm really interested to see how to go about that. I think spring ball is I'm not saying you watch spring and live and die by spring games. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're able, for you and I, that, to get to a camp and, hey, what's different this year? What'd you change? That's always my favorite. Or my favorite question is what surprised you? That's where you start. That's where they have to give you something they haven't talked about, which is a little thing that I always try and do to make sure you're getting some from a conversation. But I hate to keep using the thing feeling out process, but there is that when you have something this big, and now the magnitude is that much bigger because more teams are able to get some of that.
It's one thing that makes me mad when everybody, these spring games waste of time. Like nobody likes these things. I'm like, well, if I could sit with you and teach you what to watch for, or maybe what you could learn by watching some of these things, you'd be pretty interested in exactly what's going on. Because whether it's an individual, a position battle, how they're going to manage certain things on offense or defense, there are a lot of takeaways. That's why on this show, we'll take all the SEC spring games and we'll break them down and we'll actually talk about what we learned. But let's go into the SEC. What are you excited about in the SEC this year? What are you looking forward to watching? What interests you the most in this league this year?
That's
you think Georgia's a pretty big step ahead of everybody else right now?
I don't.
Georgia and Texas a step ahead of everybody else.
No, I don't. I think it's pretty easy to say that because of the coaches stayed, right? But when you start diving in, do they have I don't think they have a leg up, because I think their schedules are pretty daunting early on, where they have monster out of conference games coming up. So they're going to get their attention right away. Their camps are going to be, I want to say more invested, but there's going to be more sense of urgency, I believe, knowing the expectations. Also, I guess it would be, I think it's Oklahoma, because everybody talks about Texas. Texas made it to the playoff, right? And Texas made the splash plays in the portal right after the season. And you think about the system and you think about the success that skill guys have had under Sark in that system. But Oklahoma is a team, like, they weren't that far off last year, and your quarterback's gone. And now you go with the guy that everybody's wanted. I mean, you could say, Kyler's a transfer, Baker's a transfer. Like, Jackson Arnold was a kid that I felt like Oklahoma fans talked about more and highly of than any of those quarterbacks. Those guys
told me he's the most talented kid he's ever worked with. That's all you need to know.
So there you go. Right away, the expectation level and knowing that he came there right away, I think they, that Oklahoma has a real sense of pride of what they believe in Norman and just, how, they play the legacy card, more as Texas plays the big and brash, we're in Austin and you're not card. So Oklahoma in that approach, Venables not really being an SEC guy, but, he's smart enough to know what he has to do to be successful
in that way in recruiting. Correct. And you look at what they've done in the trenches. It's going that way here. I'm kind of with you on Oklahoma. I love Billy Bowman. I love Stutzman. Mm-hmm. I think the D-line's finally going to be back to being at least closer to some of those OU D-lines we saw, whether it was 8 or 20 years ago. Like they used to always have a dude, and then there was this little gap the last couple of years they didn't. And then Jackson Arnold's got a ton of talent. Losing Stoops hurts. Like, that bothers me because he was just the ultimate glue guy, leadership, alpha. And then the offensive line, man, like, they lost everybody. And I know Beatonbow is amazing. You and I both love the guy, but if you coming into this league, man, like, that can't be a weakness. It can't. I'm not saying it needs to be 95 Nebraska to win games, but it can't be a liability. You will be that you're going to get got a lot if that's a liability for you.
And I would say, as far as teams that are in it, I think A&M. I think what Elko, being able to be around him, we went to Duke, brought his whole staff over to the game day meeting room. It was one of the coolest things ever. They literally came out, everybody, the whole staff came over, Trooper, the whole deal. They got some characters there. Yeah. And now you see how he intertwined and got 2 different coordinators, but a lot of guys from Duke came, and knowing the opportunity they have right off the get with Notre Dame coming in like that, and then Riley Leonard, his quarterback from last year, like, that is a chance to change. Like, they want to change. You're going to find out how much change you got right off the get. Because when you look at Notre Dame's schedule, I think this could be their biggest game because of where it is, who it is, and where it is in the season.
Yeah, when it is. Sense. Let's be real. Like, it's much easier to hype that game up.
Yeah.
When it's 0-0 are the records, and we don't have a whole lot of other stuff. There's not a lot of football to talk about. We're going to magnify that thing, as we should. It's an incredible game. I just work the talent that's gone, man. Like, I just don't know how you play. You got both Shamars back on the D-line. Yeah. That gives you a great leg up. I get it. Greg and I actually talked about the edge kid they got from Purdue today. I think he's going to be a player. I think he's really good. But the offensive line's been decimated, and that group let you down the last couple of years. I think Connor Wigman's got the ability. Absolutely. Running back's not going to be a problem. But you lost a ton of receivers, man. I'm interested to see how it fits because I love the guy. I love Elko. I loved him when he was at A&M. We got to visit with him. It was a great hire. Like, I think you and I have talked about this. I don't say fit anymore because we have seen some of the absolute perfect fits in certain places that didn't work. Yeah. So, but he is a guy that will understand that culture and will understand how to get it right and take advantage of the resources that are there. And I think he'll do a really good job.
I also one just quick thing. I think I'm interested to see how he handles protecting the quarterback, because look at what he went through last year when they were on top of the world and Riley Leonard's got the ball with a chance to beat Notre Dame. They lose him. That season's done. Yep. And then other dynamic, A&M hasn't been able to keep a quarterback upright since Johnny, it feels like.
Right.
So that's I mean, and then of course, you look at the big picture of schools who's had success. When the good quarterbacks stay healthy, they're usually pretty good. So right. That's a huge dynamic, and he knows how important that is.
2 more in the SEC quickly. LSU defense, Perkins off the ball. People are mad at this. Folks just don't understand. Like, if you're going to play on the line of scrimmage, you have to do all the things that are asked of you at the line of scrimmage. You play tight end, you know this. Probably didn't want to block a lot, but if you want to play there, you got to do that.
Yep.
You want to play off the ball? That's great. But you got to know where to go and how to go there, and then why you're going certain places and why it looks a certain way and who is what.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those things are going to – everybody keeps pointing fingers at head coach and D coordinators. At some point in time, we got to meet in the middle. And I've said on this show multiple times, Steve, the thing that we don't do in college football is we don't meet in the middle ever.
No.
People need to have an understanding that it's not just see ball, get ball. We love to think that, it's all Troy Polamalu and put your talented guys out there. And people think Rolando McClain just ran around and Reuben Foster was just fast. Shit doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in kind of collectively LSU, but specifically LSU's defense and maybe even SEC defenses, because there's not a large handful of them that look like they're going to be super scary this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look at the surrounding because I feel like LSU's D-line was the most underperforming unit in the conference last year. When you talk about the namesake they brought, and it just wasn't there. And I got bombarded over the head with it because I was with Monday Night Football, and I talked to Marcus Spears every Monday. It would always go back to the LSU defensive line. So I look at the change made at coordinator. I look at what he did at Missouri. Like, they've had a good run of guys there, but I felt like they always had a really good plan, whether it was to attack or whether it was to eat up double teams to free up linebackers and other guys. So I think they got to be
just
more,
get guys covered.
Yeah, they got to be more sound in their approach. And when you go through the years of LSU, obviously they've had some of the best defensive I've ever seen. And yes, a lot of it was talent, but there was a method to the madness. And I think that's the key of, whether it's checking egos at the door, whether it's being slow to go on reads and teaching that. How do you teach that? That's a big part. And now maybe you get a new approach, and that assessment and that teaching is better and more liking to the players. Maybe it fits better. Maybe they're able to show the mistakes and say, this is what we're going to do differently because it's going to help us here. That's the stuff, in the offseason and spring ball that I would think, going back to your point, is what you would be watching if you were in Baton Rouge for a couple of days for spring ball. So to me, you got to like the idea of the play. There's no doubt about the ability. I don't like, everybody talks about him wanting the rush to pass. I don't know if he could stand in there and be a rusher every down. I don't think he has the girth to do that. I'm not questioning his talent at all. But when you talk about being an every down edge guy,
it's a different deal.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of shit that comes at you, whether it's and we talk about some of the minds that are in the SEC. Like, if you're a great edge guy, the first guy, we're going to run right at you, or we're going to let you get a free release. How are you going to read that? I mean, look at the Super Bowl. Look what happened with Bosa.
Yeah,
that's how the Chiefs won that game, 3 plays. So I think it's a real, and I think Kelly he doesn't get enough credit from addressing problems on your roster as far as on the tape. And I think it'll be a very good and productive spring ball for LSU.
You brought up Blake Baker.
Yeah.
Come into DC. What did he do in Missouri? They friggin' attacked.
Yeah.
Every play. So you might be an LSU fan scared that Harold Perkins is going to be a little bit further away from the ball, but I promise you there won't be a lot of times that he's not attacking the football in the line of scrimmage, which that to me is sort of the big neutralizer here. Yeah, you got to learn a little more off the ball, but you're still going to see ball, get ball at times. Yeah. And like you said with LSU, if you got Montgomery Mingo, we're going to rip off the edge.
Mm-hmm.
If you got Glenn Dorsey in the middle, we're going to make sure he causes problems. If you have Devin White, protect him, let him make all the plays, unless he's playing against Quentin Nelson. If you got guys on the outside that can cover, we're going to let him cover. And you know what? If you have Tyrann Mathieu, maybe he does freelance a little bit.
Yep.
He can do whatever the hell he wants. Just a quick thought on Alabama.
Yep.
Because I think you're like me. I love Kalen. He's incredible. I love how he manages things, handles himself. You talk to anybody that's been around him, played for him, coached with him. They all love him. This is a different monster.
Mm-hmm.
And Milroe got away with a lot last year. I think this system will ask a lot of different things from him. I don't know if they're as good up front as the group they had last year was or will be. And defensively, You lose both your edge guys. Probably the best edge tandem Saban ever had. He had maybe one guy at a time that was pretty good, but not two like that. They're not the same inside as they've been previously. Lawson can be an eraser at linebacker, lose a ton in the secondary. I mean, McKinstry and Arnold, we've seen them at the Combine this weekend. They're both going to be off the board in the first round. And now Caleb Downs is playing for Ohio State, a team we just talked about. Like, what's realistic for Bama this year?
I think for sure playoff. Now, like I said, we touched on it earlier. You know, the wins and losses aren't going to look the same, and people aren't going to be accustomed to, you know, seeing a 2-loss team early on and still have a chance at a playoff, right? Like that's the biggest thing is we're gonna so overreact to teams that are, say, 2-2, 3-2. But I trust the hell out of the guy. I really do. You talk about having a plan. I mean, we were at I think 4 Washington games this year, and to be able to see how they go about business, I think there's so many things built in. And listen, Penix was incredible. But I think there was a way of going about things where he had a lot of things built in, where it was an easy, okay, this is what I got. This is what we're bringing to the table. They give me this, I'm going here. And that's the one thing that I think that Milroe he has to throw the ball quicker. We talk about the sacks. Maybe not a better athlete in the sport, you know, but now you're talking about fine-tuning your thing, and getting smarter and sharper. Every quarterback I talk to talks about how much better they were at seeing things in year 2 compared to year 1. And we saw that, you know, I was on the sidelines for the Texas game. The early pick early on, that's as bad a throw as you can make.
Yep.
And then
got away from those though late in the year.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. And then, you know, what happens? He got humbled.
Yeah.
Got humbled. Whatever people want to say what happened, he got humbled and he came out and played like a different guy during that run. I thought he was incredible against Georgia, just not giving in. Didn't play his A game, but he just didn't give in. And I thought there was some trust, too, where he had to make some throws and give those guys. So now you talk about, you know, a bunch of new receivers that come in. I just trust the dynamic. I think here's the thing is, you watch Milroe last year. Are they going to do what they did last year? No. But I think they're going to be more balanced in what they do. You know, we've seen Kalen go different formations, week to week. But I think he's also smart enough to know, let's do what we're good at. And I have all the trust in the world from his staff. The defensive guys that he ended up getting, I think are good. And I still think there's enough talent there for Alabama to be scary.
All right, I kept you too long. I know you got something to get to, but quickly, I saw somebody who covers one of the SEC teams individually the other day. He was talking about a reserve offensive lineman that they thought they were going to keep and they didn't. And apparently the agreement to stay was $30,000 a month, but he was going to go somewhere else. So it's probably more than that. It's a kid that is not even starting right now. Put $30,000 in Stanford Steve's checking account in 97, 98 as a college football player. Just give me like a brief synopsis of the dumbness that's taken place.
Oh man!
And you were close to Vegas too back then.
No, I was just thinking we were close to Tahoe, and that's where we went. And see, I still would have been too scared to make a big purchase then. I would have been.
What would the dumbest purchase had been?
Oh gosh, I would have thought about a golf cart.
Just ride around campus.
Yeah, because Elway, there's a story of back in the day. When Elway was there, every guy on the team had golf carts, and like. If you drive on Stanford's campus, the first thing you notice is how many bikers there are.
Right.
And just imagine as many golf carts as bikes and the accidents. So, like, you always see those walkways where, like, there's just the removable stanchions so cars can't get through. We had those all over campus because of golf carts, and that's because of John Elway and his crew.
So basically,
that's a true
like,
story.
When Elway played at Stanford, it was the Villages, pretty much.
Correct.
Like,
yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Without the pickleball. There you go. Steve, awesome stuff, man. I appreciate taking some time. We'll do it again, especially when we got a little bit more real football to talk about. But thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Fired up.
Just a fun conversation there with Stanford Steve. Really do appreciate him taking some time to join the show. I wanted to share just really his conversation on getting to ESPN, getting through ESPN, getting to College Game Day, what that was like, how that changed things for him being a part of college football from that seat, what he thinks about this upcoming season, Ohio State, national, some of the topics that we talk about in the Southeastern Conference, his thoughts there with Kalen DeBoer, LSU, etc. So just good stuff. And I'm glad we got to share it with you. There are some conversations with different people that I just want to continue to share with you guys. So we're going to keep trying to do that and bring it to you each and every Sunday. Always thanks for tuning in. Gunning for 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. Help us out there. Click that subscribe button. Apple Podcasts, you can catch us there, Spotify. And if you need to find us on social media, at Cube Show, Twitter, Instagram, go check us out there. Support the sponsors, please. Wickles Pickles, Blue Delta Jeans. We'll be back with you next week.